Hey there, it's Gerry. I'm back again with a follow-up to my popular video on how to fix a Roomba Error 26 without spending a cent. You'll find a link to that video in the description below. Thanks to the amazing feedback from many of you, it's clear that the previous video has helped a lot of people fix their Roomba cleaners. However, for those of you who found that relubricating the existing motor didn't solve the issue, today's video will offer a more comprehensive solution. In this video, I'll walk you through both repairing and replacing the motor. I purchased a motor from AliExpress for around about $5 Australian. Although I didn't initially plan to show you the relubrication technique again, unexpected challenges meant I ended up having to use both methods. So you'll get two potential fixes for the Error 26 problem in this video. There are links in the description to help you navigate through the video. So here's how the video is structured. 1. Understanding the Error 26. I'll start by explaining what the error is and why it occurs. 2. How to fix it. I'll show you the step-by-step process to repair and replace the motor. 3. Where to buy a new motor. I'll share how I found the replacement motor and what you should look out for. If you're only attempting the lubrication fix, you don't need to remove the motor's wiring from the unit. It can be done with everything in place. For more details on that, check out the original video. Don't worry if you're new to DIY repairs. This is a simple fix. Anyone can do it, even if you've never repaired anything before. And remember, it's already broken. You can't make it any worse. The worst case scenario is that you'll be buying a new cleaning head from Roomba. That will definitely fix your problem, but at a higher cost. If you find this content helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel, leaving a like and dropping a comment. This really helps the YouTube algorithm suggest the video to more people who need it, potentially saving them a lot of money. Let's talk about the Error 26 and what causes it. It's my belief that the Error 26 is caused when the robot detects that there is not enough airflow to suck correctly. There are going to be a lot of reasons why that occurs. So Roomba have their own instructions for checking things like whether or not the dustbin is too full and stuff like that. If you've exhausted all of that, then we really need to start delving into pulling things apart and having a look. Now there's lots of things that could be causing this, not just a motor not spinning correctly. So my understanding is that Roomba is monitoring the speed in which the motor is rotating. And so if anything prevents it from rotating, such as missing lubrication so that it's not spinning as freely as it used to, or perhaps there's something stuck in there. As I go through the comments of the previous video, some people have said they've pulled it apart and found little bits of plastic stuck in there, preventing it from turning. Somebody said that they had found a bit of drywall stuck in there. So it's really important that we pull this apart and have a look. Don't just assume that the problem is that the motor is either faulty or that it's not spinning fast enough because of the lubrication. There may be some other things going on, but it is important that we pull it apart. If you look at the comments of the previous video, you'll find that many people have repaired their Roomba using this method, and not just this model, right, which is the Roomba i7. People have told me that they have repaired different models. It appears that Roomba has used the same motor in many of their models. So don't be too worried about it if you haven't got a Roomba i7. I think this still applies to you. The first thing we need to do is to remove this brush here. So I'm just using a Phillips headed screwdriver. And that's all we're doing. Oh, there's some stuff under there. Okay, so the next step is we need to remove 5 screws. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now these screws are captive screws, which means that you just loosen them. As far as they go, they will not come out completely, which is a really great feature because you can't lose the screws. They simply will not fall out. Okay, once that's done, we can simply lift that part off. And you can see that the screws do not come out. Fantastic. Okay, next step is to remove this part here, which has the motor down here connected to it. And there are 4 screws. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we just need to loosen those as well. And that all just lifts out like that. So let's put this aside for the moment. So the next step is to remove the motor section. And this is the bit where we want to start looking to make sure that there's nothing impeding the motor from spinning. So we just want to keep an eye open whether there's anything jammed in there that may actually be the problem. But otherwise, we need to remove this section here. This is the blower section, or the sucker section, with the motor attached to it. So there are 4 screws here, which are not captive, so they will get lost if you're not careful. So make sure you put them aside. Okay, so there we go. So far all of this is exactly the same as my previous video. So in this video we're going to replace the motor, which will mean that we will need to unplug these wires. So just make sure when you look at it you remember which way the wires come out of this unit. And it is just a matter of following it around. And pulling it out. Just gently, whatever you do, don't force it. I might use a pair of tweezers. Okay. So we've got that there, and you can see that it comes down to this little PCB here, which is on the end, and it has a little socket that it connects into. So we need to remove this PCB from the socket, and they are sort of spring loaded. There's a little bit of plastic here, and if you very gently pull it across to the right there, it should just come straight out. And there we go. So we have removed this, and the next step is to remove the motor. So to do this, we have this impeller that spins around, and this is what causes the suction, and it is just press fitted onto the shaft of the motor. So we need to be very gentle in removing this. Now let me just point out some things. You can see here that there's little bits of plastic knobs here, or nibs, or they have been broken off. Some people in the comments said that when they looked at it, some parts of the plastic in here were broken. Parts of these plastics can get caught up in here, and that could be causing it to stop turning. So, I know that this works because I've taken this from my working unit. But we do need to be careful not to break this. So the best way to do this, I've found, is to get a large flat-headed screwdriver, and I'm going to put it in right underneath, as far as I can get it in underneath. Not between the plastic, but but underneath the entire impeller there. And I'm going to push it in as far as I can go without forcing too much. And then I'm just going to twist it very gently. And then it pops off. If it doesn't pop off immediately, just keep turning this around and keep doing it until it comes off. Don't force it. Right? And so then we can take a look at it and see whether or not there's anything caught up in there. There isn't on mine. Right. So finally we can get at the motor, and that's just a matter of undoing these two screws. These two screws are different from the others, so keep them aside. And then that's it. So you can see there's a little tab in there for the wires to go through, so that will indicate to you when you put it back together which way the motor goes around. So let's take a look at the motors and see if they're the same. So the markings on it, 20N 63 6P010. Okay, so they're the same motor. So that's good. Like I said, we'll get to the point where I show you how I purchased this motor online. But I need to tell you something. This is the motor that came from AliExpress, and I can see immediately that this is a second-hand motor. Okay, it's quite obvious that it's been used. So you need to be aware of that. This motor may not work. Now the other thing that's interesting is if I turn this like that, and then I turn the one that I've lubricated, this is way easier to move. So I may have bought a motor that has exactly the same problem. It requires lubrication. It really feels stiffer than this one. So that feels the way that this motor did before I re-lubricated it. So now I did buy the cheapest one I could find. I think I paid $5 Australian for this one. They go up to $30. Perhaps there are genuine ones that aren't second-hand. Certainly the listing didn't say that this was second-hand, but you know, this is the problem that we face. So I'm tempted to actually repair this, to re-lubricate it, to make sure that it works, because it is really significantly stiffer to move. The only thing is, should I just do it and show it to you not working? What's the point in doing that? I'm going to re-lubricate this. So this is turning out to be doing exactly the same as the original video, except we're replacing it. I guess what you could do is, if you don't feel comfortable about re-lubricating it, you could simply go ahead and replace it and then see if it works, and if it doesn't work, then come back and re-lubricate it. So I guess this gives me the opportunity to attempt to re-lubricate this without actually pulling it apart, because some people in the comments have said, well, I didn't pull the motor apart, I wasn't comfortable with it, and so I lubricated it using everything from WD-40 to machine oil and stuff like that. You know, and they've said that it works. I personally don't believe that that is a great idea to use oil on it, because it simply won't last as long as the white lithium grease that I've been using. But since we have a spare motor, why not? Why not? Let's give it a go. So this is an experiment, right? I would never do this normally, just drop oil down into something like this and hope that it works. Okay, so we're going to do this purely as a test. This is multi-purpose oil, 3-in-1, and I'm going to try and get a dob of this and put it straight down into there, because I can always pull this apart and see how it goes. So I'm having a feel there to see how stiff it is. We'll try this. I'll just cut the end off a cotton tip. See if I can't get a little bit of oil down into there. See what happens if I work that in there. And it might not be just that it's lost all of its lubrication. It might be that there are tiny dust particles stuck between the shaft and the bearing, and that's causing it to do this. Okay, well, I'll be honest with you, that actually does feel better. It doesn't feel as smooth as this, but it feels a little bit smoother than it was before. Of course, I haven't plugged this motor in, so it might have worked, but I can just tell by the resistance that I'm getting in there that that motor was nowhere near as good as this one. You know what? It doesn't feel good enough to me. So I'm going to go the whole hog and relubricate it. So the way to get this motor apart is there's a couple of washers here around the shaft, and you need to get this bell housing type thing out. So what you can do is just hold the motor and gently tap this to try and force it out the bottom. Okay, and you can see that that's starting to come out now. There's magnets in there which are pulling it back, but I'm trying to get to this, these two washers here. There are two washers, and I just want to gently pull them out without them going off, flying anywhere. And I want to put them down in the same order that they came off, just in case that makes a difference. Right, and once that's off, we can now pull this apart. And did any of the oil get down into there? Yeah, a little bit did. Okay, so let me get my lithium grease, which is my go-to, and we will re-grease it. So this is white lithium grease. It is especially designed for metal on metal lubrication. It is a grease, so it will stick around longer. It will just stick to the part that you're on and it won't run off, unlike oil. And it smells great. I use it around the house a lot. I do all the hinges in the house whenever they start squeaking. You know, if you use normal WD-40, it smells horrible. My wife complains about it. So yeah, hinges and locks and all sorts of stuff. So even though it might cost you a little bit to get a can of this, you'll be able to use it for other things. Great stuff. So let's clean off this oil that I put there, because I don't like that. Okay, and I'm also going to make sure that if there's anything on that shaft there, that we're getting that off. Okay, so to apply the white lithium grease, I'm just using bog standard Q-tip, putting it on nice and liberally. Put it on the bottom as well. Better to put too much on than not enough. Okay, and so it's going back in this side. So we just put that in, and there are magnets there that will pull it like that. So they will pull it back into place. Then I'll give it a bit of a spin, and we'll see how that feels. That feels much better. Actually doesn't feel quite as good as this one, but this one's been running for 9 months now. So it may have really worn itself in. So the next thing is we want to put these washers back on. So I'm pushing them on, and before I push them all the way down, I'm going to get some grease on the underside of that. And then push it on until I hear it click, because there's a little groove in there that needs to click onto. Okay. And that's it. Now, if I had a thought that this motor was new, you know, I wouldn't have needed to do that. But yeah, I mean, AliExpress is the Wild West when it comes to buying stuff. So, you know, you may be lucky and buy one that is much better, or even brand new. But certainly I would consider doing the lubrication trick as well to this motor. Okay, next step, just reinstall it. Okay, so the next step is we need to put the motor back in. So the motor goes on the outside here, and remember we want the wires to be held in place there, so that tells us which way around the motor goes. So we just need to screw these back in. Don't screw them in too tight. They should be flush, but just tightened a little bit, because they're self-tappers and they will, if you try and tighten them too much, they'll pull out. So that's in nice and solid. And yeah, there's the wire holder, like that. Next is the impeller. So I'm just going to put it onto the shaft, and then I'm just going to push down in the middle. I have to be very careful. Just push it down until it stops, and then make sure that it's spinning nicely. All right, so there we go. That's back together now. Let's get this back into place. This is probably going to be the hardest part of the whole reassembly. Now, there is a rubber grommet here that makes a bit of a spongy seal here. So this is going to press against that, and it's going to feel a little bit elasticy. So the important thing is that we make sure that the wires are in this little slot here, so they don't get in the way of anything. And the wires are going to come up to the top like that. So I'll just rest that in place and see if we can't get the wire up in there. So you can see that the wire, there's a little slot up here for the wire to come down. We'll be putting it back down there. So let's get some of these screws back in, and I'm just going to screw them in very lightly. We need to double check everything before we tighten them, especially that the wires aren't caught, because you'd be surprised at how easy it is to cut the wires when you screw down on something, even if it's just plastic. If it's resting against the wire, it can definitely break them. So this is not the time to be rushing. Double check everything. Okay, so I can see that that's in place. It's going to push down on the rubber seal. The wires have come up through there, and if I press that down, I can see that everything is going to go back into place. Good. And so I will just tighten each of these up a little bit at a time, working my way around. So these are self-tappist screws, which means that the harder that you screw them, the more that they will pull in, and it is possible to overscrew them and have them break the plastic hole that it's in. So don't over tighten them. Just keep going around until they just don't really feel like they want to move too much. All right, because remember it's pressing against a rubber seal, so that's going to provide a bit of, yeah, and that's perfect. So now we just need to put our wire back through, and of course we want it to end up over here, was where it's meant to be. So we'll just follow this around. Hang on, tighten this up a bit. Okay, so I'm being gentle. So this bit here, so we've got 1, 2 and of these PCBs, and if I remember correctly, the wire comes out here beside the second, just to the right of the second one, which is slightly different from the way the other ones are. Take your time. Don't pull the wires too hard so that they come out. Okay, so we've got it out. And then I believe it just needs to be slotted in here, and there's somewhere for the wire to stick in down there after we've got it in. So to get it back in, it needs to go down in here, so we get the left hand side in. I just need a little pressure on this hingy part. And there we go. It's now in very nicely. And you can see that there is another path under here to hold down the wires, and we can get that in now. Hang on, let me just make sure that that's tucked away. So hopefully you can see that. So just to reiterate, the wire comes through here and then it goes down between the second one along and comes out and then goes in the top. These other ones actually come out from the back. Okay, so that's easy to try and follow those ones and get that wrong. So that's the way it should go. Well, that's it. So put in a new motor, had to re-lube it anyway. So let's get this back together and see whether or not this is going to work for us. Okay, so we'll just drop that in its spot. We've got our 4 screws to get back in. Nice. This goes on. So there were 5 screws here. By the way, if you're doing this, you should replace this filter at the same time. I found that these filters here, if your Roomba is making a lot of noise, these filters can be replaced before the time is up that it says on the app, and it'll make a big difference. And that also affects the airflow, of course. And that's it. Done. So I guess we should go and test it with the new motor, which, by the way, I don't think is as good as the motor that I took out of it. Well, there it is. It's working, no problems whatsoever. Okay, so let's go through some of the options that you've got for ordering spare parts and fixing your Roomba. So the simplest solution would actually be, and the most expensive obviously, is to go directly to Roomba and get an official cleaning head module replacement. So if we go replacement cleaning head module, it should give us some options. So you can see here, this is the module that we took out of the unit, and you know the motor is on the side there, and so this is what Roomba tell you is the proper way to fix this problem, is to just replace the whole module. So there are a few options here. So there's Amazon at $170 for the cleaning head replacement. Here's another one here for $155. $150. So, you know, that's basically what you're going to pay if you're going to buy the official replacement modules for it. It might be more expensive, for instance, if it's a different model. But there's definitely official parts available and you can go and get them, and that should definitely fix your Error 26 problem. But for $150, I think it's worth having a go at fixing your own by doing the relubrication, because you can see here, there's the motor over on this unit. You're replacing the whole unit when you're buying one of these. So even if you do something to cause damage to the one that's currently in your robot, you're going to be buying an entire replacement unit for it if you go down this path, and so it really doesn't matter. That's why I'm encouraging people to actually give it a go before they do anything else, because it's definitely worked for a lot of people. All right, so what are some of the other options? Well, I bought mine off AliExpress, and I'll just quickly show you some stuff in there if you're comfortable with buying off them. So Roomba, and there are a few options here. So by far the cheapest options is buying the actual motor. If you watched my video, you will of course see that the motor that I got was in actual fact recycled. It was second-hand. I don't think they say that in these listings, but at, you know, $4 and $9, you should expect that. Now this is important. So you can see here that in this listing it does not come with the PCB on the end of it. So it must just be the motor with the PCB cut off. You don't want that unless you are happy with resoldering it onto your existing one. So something like this, I guess. Okay, and that one does come with a PCB. So that's really what you're after there. Now, these more expensive ones here also come with the plastic housing around the motor, and that could be very useful to you if you pull this apart and you find that the plastic parts are damaged, like this impeller thing here is missing all sorts of parts. You know, mine was missing a few of these little nibs here. They didn't make any difference, but if something's got inside it and actually broken all the fins off it, that may be causing a problem as well. So, you know, you're looking at $50 to $60 to get something like that off AliExpress. Now, if you've never bought anything off AliExpress, you might be a bit concerned about doing that, buying directly from a Chinese seller. So my understanding is the way AliExpress works is when you buy something from a merchant, when you pay for it, it's AliExpress that you're paying, and they hold on to the money. They never give your credit card details to the merchant. They hold on to, like PayPal, for instance, they hold on to your credit card details, and then they will only release the funds to the merchant when you have confirmed that you've received the goods and that they are working properly. So if you don't receive the unit or it's not as you expect, then you can open up a dispute with AliExpress, and AliExpress will refund you the money. It won't be the merchant that's involved in that. But I can totally understand if you've never bought from AliExpress and you don't want to trust them. Totally get that. So the other option, I guess, is actually to go to eBay and search eBay for it. And some of these sellers on eBay will actually be from China. So if we search for a replacement motor on here, you can see here that, you know, this guy is from China, but you're purchasing it through eBay. So that might make you feel a bit better about that. Obviously, you're not seeing the really cheap ones here because it probably isn't worth it for a Chinese manufacturer to, or a seller to sell it through eBay by the time they take their cut on a, you know, a $10 item. It's probably not worth it, so you might only get certain parts. But definitely that is an option. So you have options. You can go and buy the replacement cleaning head module directly from Roomba. That will fix your error 26 because you're replacing the whole thing. And of course, if you're happy to purchase things off AliExpress, go ahead. And of course, there's eBay. So a few options there. In the video, I just purchased one from AliExpress, and as you saw, it was secondhand, and I didn't feel as though it was loose enough, so I had to relubricate the thing anyway. Okay, so we'll leave the video there. I sincerely hope that I've helped you fix your error 26. Remember to look in the description for any links to things that I've mentioned in the video. There'll also be chapters that will help you navigate through the video quickly. If you like what I'm doing, think about subscribing to my channel, giving me a thumbs up, and leaving me a comment, especially leaving me a comment. Let me know how you've gone. And I do respond to all comments, so if you have any questions, drop me a line and I'll see if I can't help you out. Also, remember that I classify all of my videos into playlists, so if you want to go to my YouTube channel, you might find some other videos to watch. I guess that's it. So I hope to catch you on the next video. Ciao.